Hello and welcome. I'm going to be celebrating the release of my CAMHS in Crisis book, which I was going to go live on TikTok, but had some issues there, so going live here instead. I'm going to be talking about my new book, CAMHS in Crisis: Writings on the Failure of CAMHS to Support Autistic People. I will, just keep talking for a moment whilst we see if anyone joins, and hopefully we'll see some people in the comments, and we can go from there. The whole point of this book really was to highlight the issues with child and adolescent mental health services, or CAMHS, and the things that they turn away autistic people. Autistic young people come to them in deep distress, needing support, and time and again they're just failed, and it's not okay. So that's what this book was about. It's about highlighting the ways in which CAMHS have failed autistic people, and really showing that this has been an ongoing problem for a while and that change needs to happen. So I'll be reading a chapter from my new book, CAMHS in Crisis, and if you can hear me in the comments and everything, please feel free to chime in with discussion and questions. This won't be a very long live. It's just a brief one to, really let people know that my book's out there. Obviously, if you want to buy a copy of my book, it's available in paperback and Kindle, and that's on Amazon. So, CAMHS in Crisis: Writings on the Failure of CAMHS to Support Autistic People. Please do say hello in the comments if you're there. I love having a bit of interaction with the audience. But in the meantime, thank you for being here, and I'm going to start by reading a chapter from my new book, and it's called "The Troubling Tale of CAMHS: A Service That Is Not Fit for Purpose." When we think of mental health services, I'm sure a lot of images are called to mind. Some people might imagine the institutions of days gone by, where people in significant states of dysregulation under the watchful eyes of orderlies, nurses, and doctors. Others might think of therapy sessions, sitting in comfortable chairs with a well-dressed person employing Freudian psychoanalytic analysis. If you're an autistic child, you probably don't know what to picture. It's likely that you haven't been given access to the service that is meant to support you. This service is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. You probably know it by a shorter name, CAMHS. According to the Mental Health Foundation, 70% of autistic people will experience a mental health issue. This already is deeply concerning. Mind asserts that 25% of the population will have a mental health issue in a given year. Why are autistic people experiencing mental health problems at nearly 3 times the rate of the general population? The Mental Health Foundation offers a suggestion for this as well: lack of access to appropriate support. In this case, CAMHS' denial of support to autistic children could very well be creating the mental health issues they are refusing to address. According to a study from BMJ Open Online, only 10% of the children under the care of CAMHS were diagnosed autistic. Given that all the statistics that exist only really look at diagnosed autistic children, we should expect autistic children to represent the majority of CAMHS service users. However, perhaps the disproportionately high rate of mental health issues amongst autistic people could be more balanced if we were getting appropriate support in the first place. I have written about the negative effects that CAMHS failures had on me in the opening chapter. I do not wish for another child or young person to experience what I did. Let's not forget that the Royal College of Psychiatrists suggests that autistic people are 9 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. At what point do we acknowledge the role that underfunded and altogether disinterested CAMHS plays in these statistics? Autistic children need robust support from competent and safe professionals. It's not enough to simply see our children. These services need to create an environment where it is unheard of to refuse access because of an autistic identity and lack of staff knowledge. Trust me, we know that highlighting their refusal to see us is just the start of this fight. Part of the problem lies with the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence and their guidelines for coexisting conditions in autistic people. They're very nondescript and offer little meaningful suggestions for supporting us. Many of the suggested interventions don't have a good evidence base or may even do more harm than good. We need to create a world where being autistic is more than an afterthought. There are so many of us out there, yet society at large treats us like the cryptids one might find in the woodland of North America. Except I am not a questionably blurry image of an unknown creature. I'm a living, breathing human being. Autistic people have lives. They have hopes and dreams, and we feel joy and sorrow. More than anything, we deserve equal access to the parts of society meant to support us in our lives. But when funds are cut to services like CAMHS, autistic people are the first to become acceptable losses. Why is it so important for CAMHS to support autistic children? Sorry, that was the next chapter I started reading right at the end there. Um, so that was the title of the next chapter. So you've had a sneak peek now. No, I really wanted to highlight with this book that it's not just simply that we already have mental health issues going on in our community and then CAMHS refuse to see us. I wanted to highlight the fact that the way CAMHS treat autistic young people compounds those mental health issues and perhaps even creates new mental health issues. We are at absolute breaking point at the moment with the number of autistic young people being turned away from services like CAMHS, and it's unacceptable that we can't get into these services that are supposed to be there to help us when we're at our most vulnerable. We are incredibly vulnerable to all sorts of discrimination and inequality, and healthcare inequality really shouldn't be a thing. As autistic people, so often it's not just mental health services either. Even in sort of mainstream medicine, looking at physical health, we experience a great deal of inequality in our access to that environment. So I think it's really important that we hold these services to account, and in particular hold services like CAMHS and adult mental health services to account. Because I would venture a guess that the reason autistic people in general are 9 times more likely to die by suicide is because of these services' failings. And let us not forget that actually that same source from the Royal College of Psychiatrists states that autistic children are 28 times more likely to think about or attempt suicide. It's unacceptable. We shouldn't be at this point in the 21st century where marginalized groups are literally losing their lives because services want to engage with them. And I think what makes this even worse is that actually it's the marginalized person, it's that autistic young person who is told they're not engaging 9 times out of 10. Because what they will do is, if you get access, they will often throw treatments and interventions at you that are completely inaccessible. And they'll then criticize you when you can't work with those interventions. They will criticize you when their service is not accessible because, as far as they're concerned, their one size fits all approach should work. And obviously, this is wrong. It doesn't work. And we shouldn't be told that we're the ones failing to engage just because those services can't meet our needs. And so, yeah, that that's what I'm trying to capture in my new book. That's what I wanted people to get from this, is that there is a better service out there. We have to build it though. We can't just sit by idly and allow we can't just sit by and allow CAMHS to fall apart, because we need our NHS services. And their current form, the underfunding, the under resource, the lack of training, it's having a negative impact on the people that that need access to those services, the autistic people, but it's also having a negative impact on the people working for those services as well, who are being who are in the position of potentially being responsible for some really severe losses of people's lives. And someone has commented, and it pleases me to see this comment. As someone working in a charity that works with CAMHS, neurodivergent voices need to be louder, and voices like yours are acutely exposing the shortcomings, which will hopefully lead to improvement. That's what I'm hoping. That is what I'm hoping. I am really, really hopeful that that my book, the petition that has over 200,000 signatures, that every article I've written, that every person's story I've published on my website, I hope that all of these come together to start building the momentum towards a CAMHS service that works for all of us. Because if there's one thing I'm sure of, we deserve support. It is difficult enough being neurodivergent in this society. We shouldn't be being turned away by the people who are there to make sure that we live happy lives. You know, Tanya Adkin and I write a blog series called Creating Autistic Suffering. And in it, we look at some of the reasons for negative outcomes in the lives of autistic people. And as much as I don't want to besmirch the professionals who are there trying their best, a lot of it comes down to professional inadequacies, professionals who are not knowledgeable enough or prepared enough to work with us. And this is why we need to hold these services to account, because there are people out there who are suffering so greatly. And if they had a service that supported them appropriately, that suffering needn't happen. So yeah, my new book is CAMHS in Crisis: Writings on the Failure of CAMHS to Support Autistic People. And it's available on Amazon currently. Hopefully it'll be picked up by some other outlets as well. But right now, Amazon is the one place you can get it consistently. It's available in paperback and Kindle. I am going to be getting an audiobook version of this book done alongside my previous book, Unusual Medicine, which looks at autism and substance use. But setting up the audiobook can be a little bit tricky because I have to find people to read it, and yeah, it's not quite straightforward as publishing the paperback and the Kindle. But you know, I'm so glad that so many people see the need for this book, because it would be really disheartening for this book to have come out and people go, well, why do we need this? Well, it's obvious why we need this to me, because I have been that young autistic lad. You know, I have been the young autistic person who was turned away by CAMHS, who was given a total of 5 minutes with a psychiatrist who did nothing for me. It's not okay. You know, children shouldn't have to grow up so soon. They shouldn't have to feel the pain that comes with living in our current society. It's unavoidable for adults at the moment. That doesn't mean I wouldn't want to work towards a world where it is avoidable. But the fact that our children are going through the same, if not worse, existential threat, it really upsets me. And you know, I'm a father myself, and I don't want to see my kids grow up in a world that isn't there for them. I want them to know that if they're going through a dark time, if they are struggling, that there is someone they can reach out to who will, at the very least, sit with them in the dark and hold their hand until they're ready to find the light. Because that's the least that our children deserve. And that is why I have written this book. It's not because I have a vendetta against professionals per se. It's because I have a vendetta against services that aren't there for everybody. And that is a big problem. They're not there for everybody. So, you know, please do get out there and share about this book. Get yourself a copy if you can. Write reviews, anything to help get it seen, because I think it's really important that this book is seen by people, because it involves, there's a lot of research in there. In particular, I've got some documents in there that were submitted to Parliament over the last 10 years that highlight the fact that our government has been aware of these failings for easily since 2014, if not longer. And I think that really says a lot about the current environment we're living in. So thank you to everyone who's come along and joined in this evening. Thank you to the people who've been in the comments. I can see Michael on YouTube is looking forward to reading the book. And Rosanna on Facebook says thank you, and that the teens they work with are going through hell. And this is what I want to change. I want to see a world where they don't have to go through that. So thank you to everyone who's watched this. Again, the book is called CAMHS in Crisis, Writings on the Failure of CAMHS to Support Autistic People. Share about it, review it, blog about it, and please do just get it in front of as many people as possible, because it's the least that autistic young people deserve. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye.